Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, your weekly dose of insider DevOps trends, AWS news, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's January 8th, 2025. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We are a DevOps accelerator for AWS infrastructure that helps teams deploy their software faster. And we do this by leveraging our over 200 Terraform modules that have been battle tested and downloaded over 100 million times. So no matter where you find yourself on this journey, we're here to help your team launch your products faster. Go to cloudposse.com/meet. Again, cloudposse.com/meet to answer a few quick questions, and we'll show you what it can all look like. So how can you maximize today's session? Well, first off, our format is very informal. You can ask as many questions as you'd like. And if you're curious about any of our open source tools like Atmos or modules, this is a great place to ask those questions. For those on the recording, we host these calls live. Don't miss out. Join us by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours. Now, I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's session valuable, share it with your team. We'll be posting a recording of this session to our YouTube channel in a few hours. So you'll find that at youtube.com/cloudposse. So let's see what announcements I got here. All right, well, first one is, this is the one Matt shared here. So if you recall, what was it? Now, I guess it's a month or so ago, there was a lot of buzz because Google announced that they had achieved new levels of computation using quantum computing. That sent related stocks up, but now Nvidia decided to burst that balloon and say the tech is still 15 to 30 years off before it becomes useful. Obviously, I think they have a very strong vested interest in seeing that get pushed for a while. With GPUs by Nvidia being their cash cow right now. Matt, thoughts?
Yeah, although I mean, I would be shocked if Nvidia isn't also going to be in the quantum chip, manufacturing space when that becomes mainstream.
Yeah.
But I think there's two things. So like one, it could be like, a little posturing on their side, maybe to hide how far along they are or whatever. But I think the point was 15 to 30 years is not, around the corner as like Google seemed to indicate like last, a few months or whatever it was, a month ago. And if you looked at what happened, some like quantum chip manufacturer like stocks, when Google announced that, some of them went up as much as like over 1,000% in that time frame. And now like a bunch of other ones, as you can see on the screen, looks like they, a bunch of them dropped by, 40 to 50% on this news. So it's interesting, I wonder if the CEO shorted all his competitor stocks before he made his announcement, because you would have made a ton of money if you did that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the things that you plan to say in your head is that considered insider trading when you're trading on another stock that may be affected based on what you're about to say. That's an interesting one. I don't know.
Yeah. Next announcement was if you write a lot of GitHub Actions, it can be annoying to find out that you have syntax errors or problems before you push, when only after you push those changes up. Here's a nice little linter that I found. I had looked for a linter for GitHub Actions some time ago and couldn't find a simple little Go binary that you can install to do that. This is now a new project by Suzuki, or Shunsuke, that implements that. Now, this guy has just a tremendous amount of cool little utilities and projects you can check out. And this was one that caught my attention. Actually, did I recall that this one got merged? It's also implemented as a module as part of a different linter that he has for other kinds of validation. So kind of cool.
For what it's worth, along the same lines, the VS Code plugin
Yeah.
for GitHub Actions actually does a pretty good job of letting you know when there are syntax errors and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
What I'm still looking for, and I haven't looked again, is the problem with a lot of these linters is they use JSON schema, and that works fine, but you got to convert the document to JSON, and then you lose line numbers. So it's hard to know, provide useful feedback in the command line tools on what lines are actually problematic.
Yeah. Even like the like OPA policy validators
Yeah,
and things have that same
yeah,
problem because they just evaluate the policy and tell you there's an error, and often it's not great at telling you the context of where the error is.
yeah. Uh, and it's just accept and the
Yeah.
larger that configuration gets, it's just a more intractable problem.
Yeah. At least the VS Code extension that I mentioned puts a red
Yeah,
squiggly under the line
it
that's
does.
bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty good
I
about
like
it.
that.
Yeah.
That has helped me countless times, especially pasting hallucinations from ChatGPT into my workflows.
Yeah.
All right. Another one that caught my attention was this that there are suspected, based on their analysis, that they observed around what they believe 4.5 million fake stars on GitHub. They achieved this by looking at the behaviors of looking at the fire hose of events coming out of GitHub and the users making the stars, and seeing that these profiles, what characterizes them as possibly fake is that they have very little other interactions with GitHub other than liking, meaning that they're not making any commits. They have no repos or things like that. And the other behavior was the kinds of things that Reddit does, which is identifying pools of users that always upvote at the same time. So they were able to see a set of profiles that consistently thumbs up the same repos within the same time windows, making them suspicious. The
Uh,
positive, oh, sorry, Matt.
oh, I was just gonna say that their algorithm, if they are doing that, should be pretty easy to randomize that so that that doesn't happen. That should be like an easy one to counter if they don't want to be detected.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, exactly. Well, it's an arms race as always, and but those would be pretty easy things, yeah, to thwart. Then I guess the only positive thing was it was mostly spam and malware using these techniques to pump up their repos, not legitimate projects. Um, Nonetheless, and interesting, I thought. And interesting, I think that GitHub doesn't do anything about it. I guess there's no real incentive for them.
Yeah, so over my break, I don't remember where because I watched a bunch of stuff, but I watched something. Maybe it was on YouTube itself. Um, I watched a video that detailed a basically a YouTube um, watching farm, and it
Hmm.
was literally just thousands of
Yeah,
phones
yeah, I've seen
that
that
all had
before, yeah.
geolocations in different spots
Yeah.
that would randomly select, different videos from this one channel, and they were just like pumping up the revenue being generated by that channel by watching,
Oh,
and they had these really sophisticated algorithms about like how long to watch for, how often to thumb it up, how often to stop halfway through, like all of these other things. So they were trying to make it extremely hard to detect that they were non-human, non-human
Yeah.
users like that are doing it. So the people who own those channels then make, significantly more money when they've got like all these extra thousands or millions of views at the end of the day. So thought it was
We
pretty
talked about
interesting.
something similar, or some of the challenges of web scraping, and it was kind of related to that, and how, and in that was an article where they showed a farm of like cellular phones used for installing apps and doing upvotes, and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty
Uh,
crazy.
So I've played a lot of poker in my life, including online poker at one point, and one of my good friends works on a security team for I'll just say a major poker site. I don't want to say which one, and their 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 job is particularly difficult in identifying those kinds of things because what they're trying to do is they're trying to identify if you're playing with some sort of like automated software, either software that tracks your opponent's behaviors in real time or analyzes the cards like that are on the table and plays, what
Mhm.
is mathematically like game theory optimal like strategy against other players. So they actually do all sorts of what you would consider like malware detection, but they're looking for other things that are like hooking the Qt engine to be able to read the cards and things that are non-mouse, non-keyboard like inputs and things that behave too consistently to be human that are actually like taking automated actions on the table and all of that kind of thing. So it's a pretty fascinating domain to try to like catch all these types of people like in what is alleged in that case is actually cheating like because you're having computer play a human without disclosing that it's a computer. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I don't know, interesting.
Which
I'm
would be
always
an interesting new form of gambling, maybe. Can there be a bona fide like algorithm versus algorithm poker games
Yeah,
for money?
that's actually what that's what like a lot of the suggestion is now is that you can have tables or games that are only well, that are bot whatever allowed.
Yeah,
If you want to go in there as a human and play against them, that's if you feel like you have an exploit against the bot, like maybe you could play against it and try to beat
at
it.
your
But
own risk.
but at least they're disclosing that it's a bot that's playing against you, and you don't have to wonder at that point, what the guy is doing, on the other side. So it's a very interesting space right now. So.
Yeah. All right. Next topic was API Parrot. I believe it's just a SaaS, not a particular open source. Oh, download from macOS features use case. Yeah, I don't know if it was free or not. I just thought the concept was really interesting. It's basically a proxy that uses an AI to suss out the structure of those API requests. And the nice thing about modern websites is they're more and more API driven with static front ends. Um, so, so the APIs can do more and more. And therefore, I think this is an interesting way if you want to try and automate data extraction, for example, from a site. This would make that easier.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a trend. I think we're actually reversing that trend, and you're finding all the major web front end frameworks right now, at least in the in the JavaScript space, are strongly moving towards SSR again.
Mhm.
They're partially rendering because they can do streaming now and they can get the browser to render like partially render pages or fully render pages while the HTTP request is still streaming down to you.
Mhm.
They're actually rendering a lot of the data and all of those things like in the HTTP request itself, not in a separate AJAX request that's made once the once the static HTML loads and, on DOM ready, triggers or whatever. So I think we're seeing a lot of that reversed. So a lot of it is not necessarily like every action that you can do on a website is not necessarily an API endpoint anymore. Which as a developer, that makes it a lot easier, I think, to do that. But and it's probably much more performant, especially on very large on very large websites. It becomes much more performant to do SSR. But little tangent, sorry. Yeah, I was just commenting on your
Yeah,
your
no, that's
assumption there.
interesting. Well, and if I understood, that was one of the big differentiators between, was it the Astro framework and Next.js? Isn't
Like
Astro entirely?
pretty much every framework now, whether it's Next, Nuxt, Astro, Svelte, like all these other ones, they've all got some format of SSR at this point.
Okay.
Even the guy that created React Query, has Tan Stack, which was renamed to Tan Stack. He just created a brand new framework called like Tan Start, I think it is. And that's like all like servers, like SSR first, as the kind of preferred way to do it. So I think like that's the industry trend right now, is that everyone's headed back that way. Pretty soon we'll all be on mainframes again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And all right, next one was I saw just via Anton Babenko's newsletter. There was an announcement last year at some point about CodeBuild working as runners for GitHub Actions. In reading through this, it was clear it's not for the faint of heart, the initial setup to get it all working, as you could see by all that. And as I recall, when we looked into it, you couldn't create organizational runners. You had to deploy a configuration for each individual repo. And that was the deal breaker in the end, if I recall. But haven't looked into this anymore. Anyone know? Conclusively? No.
I haven't looked at this in a long time.
Are there any?
Yeah.
I haven't looked at that method that you're referring to, but I am curious. Are there any like SaaS services that you'd recommend that will just set up GitHub self-hosted runners for you, where you don't have to?
This one is good. Yeah. Matt
Runs
had
on.
another one that came up, but runs on is also really good. They're a rare exception of SaaS that is priced yearly, but at a price that is like, shut up, take my money, don't worry about it. I think it's like a few $100 or something for a license. And it's a glorified CloudFormation template. And it's entirely managed by you. It's not a SaaS, but it is turnkey, and you don't really need to do much at all to get it running, and it works 10 times better than Actions Runner Controller. And you don't need to manage Kubernetes with it as well.
Oh, so you do have to maintain the template that they give you. Like you have to control the.
Well, they maintain the template, if you will, and you just run it in your account.
It's a SaaS basically that
Well,
you plug into.
But I don't think they actually run servers on their end, to be clear.
No.
Yeah. So it's
yeah.
It is, software as it.
Well, they run the management interface that you configure all the stuff in to like do your template thing, right? Isn't there like a thing where you log in and like
there might be very thin thing
Yeah.
to generate a config or something for you. I didn't set it up myself, but if you're curious about it, I mean, if you were just using Atmos and our reference architecture as you've been talking about doing, this would be an easy thing. So you go to Learn and you go to Automate configure GitHub Actions, and then we have a runs on. This is Philips Lab Actions Runner Controller. Where's runs on? I know we have runs on. I think it's right now just the component documentation. So if we go to reference components, AWS, and then runs on, we have a component for it. And you can use those components without Atmos, of course, but everything's easier when you do. So that deploys their CloudFormation template, and you just provide a license key to it, and it works fine.
Cool. And you just deploy it once and basically set it and forget it, I take it?
Yep, set it and forget it. Unlike Kubernetes, Carpenter, and Actions Runner Controller. That is, deploy it and then spend, hundreds of hours a month optimizing.
Yeah, I didn't realize you guys were using a SaaS. I recall you guys had a Terraform module that did this. And so
Yeah, we have a few approaches. We have one simple component that deploys an auto scale group with the agent on there. It works for small teams. It's a simple solution. It's very easy to understand. It's just an auto scale group. The auto scale group scales not based on queue depth, but based on CPU. So it has a naive solution where if the CPU is busy, just keep adding nodes. So more jobs get picked up. And when the CPU is low, that means there must be no jobs, then it scales down. But we've been promoting the Philips Labs runners for a while as also an alternative. That also works pretty well. That works better than Actions Runner Controller. Actions Runner Controller is just a master class in Kubernetes optimization and Actions Runner optimization with a lot of caveats. And there was a major release of Actions Runner Controller that changed how it scales or how it works that I don't know the details on personally, but has caused a rift in the community, but also complications in how to use it. So we are pulling back from Actions Runner Controller.
On a somewhat related note, one of the things that runs on also makes that I did some research on and pointed my friend in a direction, and he implemented it and said it works really well, is that you can switch out your GitHub cache to be an S3 bucket. So you don't have to pay for all the crazy GitHub storage. And it's actually much faster, my friend said. So I don't know why that is, but I think it runs on it's like a GitHub action that you can, oh, there it is, Magic Cache, that you can run, and it basically like will cache all of your stuff inside an S3 bucket instead of in the GitHub cache itself.
That's cool.
And he was doing something to warm his cache first. He wanted to know, like, he wanted to like have an external process that warmed the cache for his CICD for some stuff he was doing, and that's why he ended up using this, because he could easily figure out how to warm the S3 bucket, basically.
That's cool.
Yeah, the pricing looks pretty cheap for what you get. Looks like it's a flat rate. So hard to complain at that point.
Yeah, it is. I wouldn't be surprised if he changes it at some point in the future, but at least the way it's priced right now is just to build as much adoption as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you get personal for free, and then if you're a business, it's a flat rate for like 25 euros a month. Looks pretty reasonable. I can't picture myself maintaining this for less than that per year.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm curious about with this that I haven't actually tested is what if you block what if you block the license server? Like what ends up happening to your runs there? Because it actually like validates the license with the runs on like server itself. So if you click on architecture right there, that diagram, that's what I was just looking at. So basically they spin up on App Runner, they spin up their server. That is the thing that controls like all the scaling and all that kind of stuff. And it has to talk back to runson.com for like license check and all that. So how long are you're basically putting them in the critical path of your actions running, I guess. And what happens if that, like, they go down? Like, I'm not suggesting block them for nefarious reasons, like to try to skirt their license. I'm just more curious, like, how long can they be blocked for before, like, your like containers go offline, so that, or your EC2 instances go offline, and you can no longer run, GitHub Actions.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Next, next announcement was just something forthcoming that I'm excited about in Atmos. So the reason why I wanted to talk about it was I think sometimes it's hard for people to get their head around Atmos, because Atmos is not just like one small purpose-built tool. It is a product that does a lot of things for a lot of tools. And one of those things that it does is gives you really a data model that describes your architecture. So let's say you were using Terraform without any other tooling or things like that. How would you find, how could you query your Terraform to get data back and out of it? Well, with Atmos, we make that pretty easy, because your entire configuration that describes your architecture is in YAML. We are adding a query argument here. So when you run Atmos describe commands, you can query it for a given path. And if you've ever used the GitHub client, the GH client, one of the nice things it supports is a --JQ argument. So you can extract any data you want absolutely out of the responses from commands using the GitHub client. Well, now you can do that with Atmos, and you just use YQ, which is a riff on JQ for querying that data. So this is a great way to ask any question of your configuration and get an answer without trying to do other workarounds. So you can get all the settings for your VPC in production. You can run that same query and figure out what the variables are. It would be relatively easy to start searching for also, anywhere some variable is set and so forth.
Yeah. So I wrote the Atmos get setting action that we have, the GitHub action, and this would have been very handy for that.
Yeah,
If you look at that,
almost useless.
yeah, I basically piped everything to JQ, and then wrote a bunch of like crazy JQ to make sure that it gets all the settings, like basically settings out that you want. So now we don't even need that action. You can just run an Atmos command to get the same info.
And I think this is the trajectory we want to take.
Yeah.
More and more is, instead of making more and more GitHub actions, just build the functionality directly into Atmos. And that's the realization, or the mea culpa, that we've had. All right. That's all the announcements we had on the list here. Any other interesting things catch your attention this week? Somebody said namespace.so. What is that?
Oh, you're pwned.
Remember your build and test times namespace is a purpose-built compute platform that offers you the fastest developer workflow performance. I have to say, Runzon, they got the best name though. Namespace does not evoke what this does. All right. Harry asks, are people getting mad at Honey? What's the backstory there? This is Honeycomb?
Oh, so this was more of a Honey is stealing the forwarding token, it is all over the place about all of these people who were advertising honey have been getting their commissions stolen from them, and they are heated. Every content provider is so mad. Like there's a class
I think
action
we need to take
lawsuit.
a step back. I've never heard, when
Okay,
I heard honey, I
like
was
from the
thinking
beginning,
honeycomb.
there's a plugin you can get for your browser. So when you
Okay.
check out an item, you click a button, it says check for a coupon, like coupon
Okay.
codes. And it checks for
Oh,
a
yeah.
coupon code. But when it does that, it gets the last click in and it changes the redirect URL so that PayPal gets the commission. So if you redirected from a content provider and they're expecting your commission, uh, so every content provider, like some people really got like advertised for this product because they were like, it's free money in your pocket. You can totally use this and it'll search the internet for your coupon codes and you can save tens, maybe hundreds of dollars. And yeah, they saved them money maybe, but it was directly out of the pockets for every commission, redirect link everywhere, going straight to PayPal instead. And PayPal is PayPal's response was not the best.
But I'm surprised this is getting attention now. I mean, this has been around for a while and it's always worked that way, no? I mean, they've always
Yes, it's just nobody took the time to look at what was happening. So what you have to do is have this plugin, and at the moment you click the button, it changes it. And so if you're not looking at what exactly it's happening, and it's a very quick refresh behind the scenes kind of sneaky mode, you don't know it happens. And so it takes somebody who's one, tech savvy, two, has this plugin, and three, has a stake in the game to actually go, hey, what's happening? You don't know that this happens. And so one provider went in and was just like, this is dumb, this is crazy, they've been doing this for years, they've taken money out of my pocket, I can't even guess how much they've stolen from me. And it got traction quick because we're talking about people's livelihoods have been affected.
Yeah.
It came to light because there was one guy, there's one guy, his name's like Mega Lag or something like that.
Yeah.
He's a huge like YouTube guy from New Zealand. And he's the one who like discovered the thing and like brought it to light, and he's the one that made the claim, and now they filed a class action suit.
Yeah. And what's even better is the coupon codes that Honey will find they're only providing the codes that are authorized by the website. So if you are selling stuff and you say, honey, I don't want you to give better codes than what I want you to, they will totally do that and follow the agreement. They don't actually scan the internet. They scan their database of approved codes per seller.
Yeah, I think I'll only say like this is like everything that you just said is what has been alleged.
Yes,
PayPal.
This has all been alleged, but it
Yeah.
looks very damning when this guy walks you through it. Like I've actually watched the video, and he has smoking gun proof.
So I actually heard something different about allegedly the coupon codes are not in the database all the time. Allegedly, if you did not have a coupon code registered with Honey as a company, Honey would find a coupon code and add it to their database, and then it would screw up the marketer's ability to track the different distribution channels they're using for that coupon code, and then they would reach out to Honey and basically work with Honey and actually add a coupon code just for Honey to add into that database.
I think that's definitely one thing, but I think the one part of the lawsuit that was in there, there's like two forks or prongs or whatever of the lawsuit. The one is like that they're doing that affiliate link hijacking. So basically they're saying Like if they see like someone else's affiliate code, they'll swap in their affiliate code so that Honey, which is owned by PayPal, gets the affiliate link. But then the second is they were accused of basically like they might know of like a 50% off coupon, but their partner pays them to prioritize a certain coupon when people look for it. That's only 25% off. So when you go and say, show me the best, for Venkat's web store, show me the best coupon you have, they'll show you the 25% off one because you've paid them to prioritize that coupon over anything else. But it's there, but like there's like you have to take multiple steps to see the one that might be the best deal, basically. It isn't the one that automatically pops up or is auto tried when Honey runs through and tries all the different coupons that it knows about and all of that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting how this all shakes out. My guess is that there'll be some settlement and we'll never know how it shakes out, but
Interesting. I will save that for later and check that out. Sounds interesting.
yeah.
All right. Let's see, any other topics we can discuss today? Any questions?
I do have some questions about your various experiences, maybe consulting or companies you work on, successfully implementing a cohesive tagging strategy that didn't get developers to mutiny. Just want to understand if anyone has actually succeeded. And this is not in a greenfield environment. This is like
No.
things already exist and you want to change towards tagging.
Yeah, I think that's the key aspect of this is not greenfield. I mean, I would argue we have a successful tagging strategy in every one of our engagements because we start with it from the ground up. It's embedded into null label and everything there and our conventions to organize it. However, it is a bigger conversation to talk about it in a brownfield environment, especially environment already with tags, and depending on the size of the organization, how to model all that out. So yeah, I'll pause there. Anyone?
I would also add that in large organizations, there are generally like a ton of teams, business units, whatever, that rely on the tagging strategy that's in place too. So like you'll have like project management people like that are tied into there. You'll have cost allocation and finance team that's tied into there. You'll have security and compliance who's tied into that to figure out who owns it. A lot of like the IT service desk is tied to that, so they can figure out like who the ownership is of certain services or certain servers if things come up with it. So even if you come up with a new strategy and you can figure out how to get the tags onto the resources, that's probably only like a quarter of the battle, or maybe half the battle, in very large organizations. They're often like systems that rely on all these things and the AWS billing and cost analyzer and like all of those things too. Like so there's usually tons of stuff that's tied to that tagging data. Sometimes even policies, IAM policy has that as condition fields too. So there's a lot to be thought of when you go to switch that strategy up.
So Isaac, it sounded like you're having some experience or about to. Do you know, or can you share any more details about it? Like, what are the problems that you're encountering?
Oh, no, I'm not encountering any specific
Okay.
problems, but I was discussing with a colleague who is trying to embark on this. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, and well, not a colleague, but someone in our industry was trying to embark on this in a different company. And I know that I failed miserably when I tried to do this at my former company. So I was
Mm.
curious about like how do people actually succeed doing at implementing this kind of a change, because ultimately his desire is to use tagging for a lot of security purposes, right? So AWS has all the ABAC stuff that you can really get fancy. I know not all services support those condition keys and whatnot. But I can see the vision and see how it would really simplify, the job of someone trying to manage and corral security for an AWS account with tagging and people only seeing resources that they should see and all of that stuff. And I'd just like to have, watch someone succeed at it and gain some insider experience so that if I ever have to do that in the future, I can also.
Okay.
But that's background.
I think it really depends, going back to what Matt said, is who's involved in this and who has a stake in it, and that's going to determine how easy or hard it is. I think what you're describing in terms of using it for IAM and authorization is possibly a very different beast to solve than doing it for cost allocation, which might be a little bit more straightforward and less controversial, especially if there are existing conventions. So, unless, yeah, Matt's shaking his head, I guess reading between the lines, because that also determines who's going to pay for it, and some people might not want to pay for it.
Well, and in very large organizations, I've often seen where they get into like shares, basically, like when they have shared resources. Like as an example, like you're paying, $1,000 a month for like DNS domains and queries and whatever. Then they actually try to figure out how to slice and dice that $1,000 across like all the organizations that are, or all the services that are relying on that DNS, and give them each a fraction of the share of that $1,000 internally. Like, I once worked on a project for like HP, where there was a team. I wasn't on the team, but there was a team of like 15 people whose sole job it was to like charge back like shared services like within the organization. So moving the money around like within the divisions, like within cost centers inside of HP, which is like crazy. So people, I've seen it go really crazy and really far. And I don't know. I get, anytime I think about tags and having to use them for those types of things, it like makes me like shiver a little bit. Like, oh, I'm glad I don't have to do that as my job.
All right. Any other questions we can get to today?
Yeah, I do have a different one. Has anyone used SPIFFE at all?
No.
Heard about it. Sounded pretty cool for MTLS, right? From HP, I think.
Yeah, it's a way to issue certificates for your workloads, and it's with an E. You can then, use that for
Yeah, I'm not sure if
certification.
I was thinking that it's part of like a service mesh, like a CITO or one of the other ones would support it, but I have not deployed it myself. It seems pretty cool though.
Yeah, I know. What the heck is the thing on AWS? App Mesh supports it as well. Like there's a lot. It's becoming like the standard, or a standard, I should say, that a lot of these uh, service meshes are supporting as a way to do it.
What would be helpful for me to understand is why this over some of like the more mainstream approaches, arguably Istio.
I mean, Istio is a service mesh, right? This is
Yeah,
just
yeah.
the
But
this
this is
is
just handling the one small aspect of that, the MTLS portion of it. But Istio does MTLS. Why have a specific thing that only does this one thing?
I think part of the idea is to have one service that you can use everywhere. So not just identities for things in Kubernetes. It can be identities for your VMs. It can be an identity for if you start a code space in GitHub and you wanted to have an identity. So for instance, give it AWS credentials or connect to your VPN
I see.
or
Okay,
whatever. You can use SPIFFE for that reason to solve that problem.
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you're the question you're really asking, Eric, is why why use an open protocol over a proprietary one? I mean, that's really what it's coming down to. Like SPIFFE is meant to be the open protocol that all these other tools use to do this, versus each one having their own custom implementation
that.
of
Okay, got it.
the how that all works. So I think that's the TLDR
So
on.
is it like, so you're saying what, hypothetically, if Istio were to be started today, they would just use SPIFFE for the MTLS portion, together with Envoy and the rest of what it does. It doesn't need to implement that logic. Okay.
Yeah, and basically it's just like it's just like whatever, a standard, right? And it's basically
I
saying
got you.
like, here's how you should issue workload-based identities. I mean, I think that's the idea. The idea.
That's helpful. Yeah, I didn't get it originally, but that makes sense.
And the other thing is it doesn't it doesn't rely on host names or IP addresses.
Hmm.
Right, so you actually get they're portable basically along with the workload that's running on it. So I think that's the key like takeaway of why everyone thinks it's better.
Very cool.
And those of us that have forgotten to add, CNs or an alternate principal SPNs and all that kind of stuff um, to certificates over the years, will say like this seems better, where each workload gets its own unique identity, and then you can authorize all those identities in certain places.
Graduate projects of CNCF. All right. All right, any other questions?
I have one more since no one is asking. Can I?
All right, fire away, man. Thank you.
Okay. I've been thinking a lot, I've been doing a lot of DevOps, and my current role, I do a lot of DevOps, but also spending a lot more time on the DevSecOps side and thinking about security and all of that stuff. And one thing that I am wondering is, lots of companies bigger companies have more of the financial ability to do this, but spend a lot of money on security software that is supposed to keep, things safe, cloud security, etc. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get into that. And yet we still have all these breaches. And I just wonder, are these things even useful if they're not really making any difference, right? That's one. And then the other is, I wonder, what do smaller companies do for their security, right? They can't afford these big names, Synapse and all whatnot. So what is a 100-person, 150 small business or startup? Or do they just assume that no one is going to attack them because they have nothing of value? So just swirling in my mind.
For us, I think we are trying Akido. It's like a Belgian startup, and it's doing like all-in-one security, and their pricing model kind of acceptable comparing to the big names. And before that, we are actually testing Akido right now, not fully using it, but testing it. Before that, we heavily use like the open source one for anything, like for a backend in Go language, we look into the open source stuff for that one. And yeah, it's hard. You need to build your own security tools around it, I
Yeah,
guess.
I think Isaac's point is more like, not specific details, but, when you have all of that done, will you still feel safe and secure? And how much is that costing you as a company to implement, both with the human resources and possibly software subscriptions? Obviously, if it's open source, you forego that one part, but you trade that with labor. I think, it's fair to say the generalization of just saying, that all these tools are getting installed and yet we are hacked. They're two separate things, right? Maybe the people getting hacked aren't the same ones that have the tools. And yes, there are people who have the tools and are still getting hacked. So it's hard to address the specifics of that. It's obviously a tremendous business opportunity. You're selling an insurance against some large catastrophic event, and it's what a salesperson can sell all day long with a good value-based price. So I think there's some predatory products out there. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Yeah, I have probably a somewhat shocking take on this. You know, when you're talking about the startup and you're talking about like maybe slightly larger than like, you know, what a bootstrap startup, you know, 10 people, 25 people, you know, whatever, to something slightly larger than that. While we're talking about like IT, you know, infra security, you know, whatever we want to call it, infosec, you know, any of those things, it's probably one of, you know, 150 things that they're not doing, that they're not doing at the scale of what they'll be doing as they become an enterprise. And not even on the tech side, like, you know, how many 10-person startups do you know of have a proper HR you know, HR process with like, you know, onboarding and exit interviews and making sure that you do background checks and making sure that people, you know, have the right complaints and you're adhering with all the laws in the various places that they're in, blah, blah, like most of the time it's just the guy's writing a check and hoping he's deducting the most, you know, the right amount of money from payroll. And if you want to take vacation, you tell them what vacation you want to take, and they track it on a whiteboard or in an Excel spreadsheet or, you know, something like that, right? I mean, that's just one, you know, crazy example, but like, I think there's probably a ton of process that small businesses just don't have the time and resources, you know, financial and human capital resources to take on, so they just don't get done at the level that they really need to for a proper company. And infosec is just one of like 852 things on that list. And
Yeah.
we're just shocked about it because we're hypersensitive to infosec, you know. But when you find out, like, you know, whatever, like, you know, if you know, Bill down the hall gets hit by a bus, the whole company goes out of business. No one has a salary or a job or anything else anymore. Or, you know, we're not backing stuff up all the time, or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, that happens all the time. So leaving yourself exposed to infosec problems seems like a pretty like common thing. And then eventually you get to a scale where it matters to you, and you do then end up spending money and time, to, you know, to address those things. Like the pain becomes greater than the risk of tolerating it. I think that's the reality, for most like small and medium businesses.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I was thinking that that's probably the case where, like I said, they don't really care at this point because they're just trying to stay alive, right? And so eventually that will be a problem. But I also get the distinct impression that even at bigger companies, so not a 10-person startup, I'm thinking, you know, 100, 250, 1,000, talking with developers, I get the impression that developers care about security in some sort of abstract sense. And like, oh yeah, it's something we should do, it's important, et cetera, et cetera. But no one actually really could tell you if you ask them, okay, how does your company keep X or Y secure, all that stuff secure, right?
Yeah.
Mainly the InfoSec team that cares about that stuff. And then they have all these big tools that they buy to help them. But those tools also pretty much just give them a dashboard and lots of alerts that they can never ever complete, you know, solving Dependabot and RenovateBot abilities and
Yeah.
AWS Security
Yeah.
Hub screaming at you. Just feel like there's so much lip service to security, but like who's actually doing security well? I haven't had those conversations with peers in the industry that can tell me, oh, our company takes security seriously and this is how we do it. And it's
Yeah.
not just InfoSec, it's also the devs, etc. That's what's
Well,
going in my head.
yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm also saying, like, I think it's some sort of bias. It's like it's like a job title bias, right? Like you're like, you as an employee there or whatever are concerned about it because you're reading industry news and you're seeing these things and you think you should be concerned about all that stuff. But I guarantee you, every person there is like concerned about, or really like concerned and wants to make sure that they get a paycheck every week. And they're not asking the questions about like, how are we doing cash flow forecasting? What's our system that's making sure that all the taxes are properly handled? And what's the thing that X, Y, and Z? Like, it's, yes, I agree. Like, all those things are important, but people at that small scale are like, there's one guy who's the nerd about it, who's like probably the CFO or the split brain CEO, who's also acting as the CFO, that's worrying somewhat about that, but they're also not deploying, you know, SAP to make sure that their entire accounting system is up to speed when they only have 10 people. They're like, they got an Excel spreadsheet where they're debiting and crediting and, you know, putting string together to make things work to get them to the next level. And I think that that's like the same thing with InfoSec. Like, that happens with a million different topics in the business world until you get, so, you know, the 100-person is, you're probably starting to really think about it depending on your industry. But certainly as you approach that 1,000-person, I think it starts getting, you know, much more solid, and you've got a lot more formality and all of those kinds of things in place. I would say it's somewhere between that 100 and 250 that you'll start to see those real solid things coming into place for all, but, you know, it depends on the industry, I guess. You know, if you have 250 employees, but like most of them are, you know, out installing fences or something like that, and you've got 10 back office staff and like some web apps that you run or whatever, probably a lot less focused than if you have 250 developers running an online like SaaS platform or something like that. So yeah, I think it's just one of those things that you make do until you can afford to not make do. And Eric can probably even share like some of our compliance things and whatever we're going through now. So
yeah, I mean, we're going through some of that. I mean, one of those triggers is some of these things you don't really pay attention to until you're trying to get a SOC 2, where you say you do the things you say you do. But the reality is what Matt has said, and with all of these, is like there are a million things that can kill us. There are a million things to worry about. As an InfoSec person, you have the privilege of only having to worry about this small domain. And as the person worried about the database, they have the privilege of only having to worry about databases. But the person sitting above them and above them and above them is worrying about other problems, even different to those. And there's only so much you can focus on. And yet life moves on, right? And some companies get burned and some don't. Many more don't get burned than than those who do.
Got it. So that confirms my suspicions. It's pretty much Squid Game going on here. So
yeah, well, it's like, yeah, it's when push comes to shove, right? How much of that would you do on your own free time if they weren't going to pay you for it? And the answer is probably nothing. And well, somebody's got to pay for it. And where's that coming from? And then it's a financial problem again. And you know, there's so many things, strategic way. Capital is strategic. Where do you want to strategically use it? And will security strategically make the company more money? And that's what they really want for shareholders. It'll be an ugly thing if you get hacked, but that doesn't matter if you're not making money.
Yeah,
So.
and case in point, what security suite with monitoring and alerting and real-time data analysis and everything else are you running at home on your personal laptop?
that's a good question.
Right. Like, that's pretty important to you, right? But you haven't prioritized like deploying a really strong security suite on that, right? And I think it's just because like you could, I mean, that would be like insane, like to do that. Like if you know, you had CyberArk or something like, you know, in your in your house to make sure like no one's breaking into your Wi-Fi and, you know, all that kind of, I mean, there are clearly like, you know, smaller point solutions, but that's my point, is just not like, it hasn't risen to the level of you know, a level of like risk where you think that you need that like at your house, and lots of small businesses think that same way.
Made me just think of this. It was the enterprise smart home syndrome, which is not supporting what Matt's saying. It's actually the contrary. It's sometimes where we know because of our day job, we know we should be doing all these things, and then we bring that into our home. So we have like a, you know, RAID 7 array at home, and all the battery backups, you know, to survive 24 hours, and just so that my Home Assistant server won't crash. I
Yeah.
think we can get by without it.
There are definitely things about that, you know, but secure, none of those things in there mention security, I bet.
Yeah, still that's not
Yeah.
one of those. So
Yeah.
it's the industry's done a great job raising awareness to the importance of it, but they have financial incentives. So, all right, well, we are at time. Thanks everyone. Isaac, thanks for coming armed with lots of questions as usual. So we will look forward to your next litany of questions next week.
Sounds good.
All right, bye-bye. So yeah, that wraps it up for Office Hours. We'll be posting a recording to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/cloudposse. And if you are interested in working with Cloud Posse at your company, reach out to us at cloudposse.com/meet. Again, cloudposse.com/meet. We have a Slack community. It's a great place to meet others here on Office Hours. Go to slack.cloudposse.com. And we do syndicate our Office Hours that are also on YouTube on a podcast. Go to podcast.cloudposse.com for that. Have a great rest of your week, and happy 2025. Talk to you later.